Welcome to Spiritual Slang.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Are you excited to be here?
I'm really excited to be here. This is going to be good.
I know. I'm excited. Okay, so I kind of want to first, before we get into anything, really just talk about like how we know each other and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. So I met Chanel back in 2018 when I joined community groups. And I know Bree, who you had in the show previously, she was our community group leader. And it was a great time. And when I look back at it, I realized just how desperate I was for like friendship back then. And I really wanted friends. I really wanted to get to know everyone, but I traveled so much for work that I couldn't really do anything beyond just like our Monday meetings whenever I was able to make it. And so I remember just like crying out to God, like, God, I want to be friends with these people. And look at us a few years later, we are actually friends. And it just makes me happy to know how, even though God might not answer what we think we need and want in a particular season, he has a plan for it. So be patient. And so I'm happy I was patient and I just obeyed every step that he asked me to take from 2018 to now. And now I've gotten to see you grow and look at where you're at. And here I am also. So
no, but I love that because patience is truly key with like when it comes to anything with the Lord. And I feel like a lot of us in that community group were looking for friendship at that time because some of us had just like gotten saved and then others of us like had just gotten more into the church. And so I feel like that group was like key to so many friendships in my life. Like we're still friends, I feel like all of us to this day. And I think that was back in like 2018. So that's like 5 years ago.
Yeah, I did the math last night. I was like, wow.
You wanted to make sure that was right.
Right? I joined the community group April 2018.
Yeah. And I think it started like February 2018 or something like that. So that's amazing. Yeah. Okay. So I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you.
But the reason I wanted to have you on is because one, you're great. And anytime we have conversations, they're like truly fruitful and they're so wise. And we just have good conversations and we're able to like bounce off of each other. But also because like we are similar in the sense that we're like Christians, living the Christian life, devout, sold out for Jesus. But then also like we work in the corporate world essentially, which doesn't have a lot of believers and can get can just be different from life when you go to church or in your Christian community versus, it's different from that. Like corporate life is different from that. And so I think it's like great to talk about because I think there are so many people out there that are kind of in the same spaces where you're a Christian, but then you're like working in a space that might not be as Christian. And you can sometimes get caught up in like the worldly things of that space or get caught up in like just trying to keep on the right track and not fall into it or get let it consume you or like become it, you know? And I feel like we've both probably have had our like moments within it and everything like that, which we'll dive into. But I think we do a relatively good job at like still showing up fully as ourselves, which came after like years of being in that space. Because I've been in that space since I became a Christian. So like I got saved in like 2017 and got my first job that wasn't like spirit led or like it was still corporate world in 2017. So I've like had that whole, what is that, like 6 years or something of learning how to do it. And so I kind of want to talk about that. And so if you want to kind of just give, before we do that, I scared it. But before we do that, I want you to give like an elevator pitch style of your testimony.
Ooh.
So people get to know who you are.
An elevator pitch of my testimony. Okay, so I grew up one of 3 daughters of a single Nigerian immigrant mother. And so assimilating to the American culture was something that was always really hard for me. And it's funny because I learned how to like speak English by watching TV shows. And that's where growing up, I always had like people say I had this Valley girl accent. And it's because I was watching California-based TV shows. So that's how I picked up my English. And I think that there were just a lot of expectations in my household
Mm-hmm.
to just be better than what my parents came from. And my grandmother was illiterate. My mother is a pharmacist, and my grandmother's goal was like she wanted her kids to be successful and to be educated, because she didn't have that ability when she was growing up. And so she really pushed my mother and her siblings, and my mom really pushed myself and my two sisters, because she's like, I need you, to be greater than myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so grateful for that, because I think that when you see what hard work is modeled in front of you, you know that you too have to work hard. And so my whole life has just been like really striving for educational success. And then
Mm-hmm.
it became like career success. And so I think that in that ambition, I had to learn over the past few years what it looks like to let God be the one who is the author of that,
Mm-hmm.
and guiding me towards that. And so when I was in college, I went to school because of the only way I could go to school was if I got a full ride scholarship. And so I went to the school that gave me the most money. And so I went to college in Oklahoma. People are like, that's so random. Like, where?
Yeah.
Why Oklahoma?
I don't think
But
I knew
yeah.
that until a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
When I went to go eat.
So I went to an HBCU called Langston University in Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got there, I wanted to be a political science major, because I knew pre-law was what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
My second semester freshman year, they're like, oh, actually, we don't have political science or pre-law.
Mm-hmm.
Like, excuse me? Like, why did you accept me? So basically, I had to go through this journey of like asking God, like, what do you want me to do? Because
Mm-hmm.
of this is what has been on my heart the entire time growing up. I was always told, you talk a lot, you like to argue, you have to be a lawyer. Like, it just makes sense. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what I figured my life was going to look like. But starting sophomore year, I had to just seek God and say, like, what do you want me to do? And so I picked up a dual major in economics and business management, international management. And the international management piece came in because my mom had a pharmacy and she was struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I need to help her with business. And I don't know a whole lot right now, but I need to learn, because I need to be able to help, this woman who's given me everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I picked up that dual major in business, and I was able to like help her with accounting, help her with just like the business management aspect of owning a business.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately the business failed. But in that, I was able to learn so much as a college student of what it looks like to just be dependent on God. We were making no money. I was
Mm-hmm.
looking at the books. We were in red every single month. But I watched my mom tithe off of no income. And it's like, how do you do that? Why would you do that? And in that season, I was like, God, this doesn't make sense. Why is she tithing when we are literally suffering in the house?
Mm-hmm.
But I got to see what it looks like when God says, if you honor me with your little, I will do the impossible in your life. And so I think looking at that, I just strive to make sure that everything I do honors God. And so in my career decisions, I ended up, after graduating, I did an internship with this federal agency. And after graduating, I thought I was going to go to law school until I realized that I haven't like done the LSAT or taken the GMAT or GRE. Like, I've done nothing. So I was like, okay, God, I'm going to take this step, and I'm going to trust that you are in me taking this position here. And it was just crazy how he worked, how he closed. God, for me, he closes doors because he knows that I'm going to try to like push my way through it. And so he's like, I need you to know that I'm closing every other door, and that door that's open for you is where I am. Because that's just how he knows his children. And so I love that he treats us based off of like our personality types and how he knows we're going to respond. And so all the doors closed. My only option was to come to LA and work for this agency. And I thought it was going to be like a 1 or 3 year thing. And here I am 6 years later. And I know that I'm where God has called me to be. And that's just the desire.
Okay. So I love that you've been here for 6 years now.
Yeah.
And that's just like, it's so crazy. That's a good amount of time. Yeah. But there are a couple of things that you said that I really wanted to like re-emphasize, because they're so important. And one of them is about trusting God with, honoring God with the little, and then that way he can trust you with the big. And I feel like that is something that is that is so hard to get right for some reason, and it's been hard for like a lot of us, you know. But in talking about like work and faith and stuff like that, that's like something I had to learn too, is because at my last job, I started as an intern and wasn't making any money. I mean, I made like a stipend or whatever every week or every 2 weeks. So it was like nothing. And I had no car, so because I had just moved out here and all these things. And so but I just felt like I had to work at this and just be like, even if I got like little, like this is where I feel like the Lord is leading me. And this was beginning of my faith. So I don't think a lot of times I knew it was the Lord, but as I look back, I know it was the Holy Spirit. But I had to like honor that space of my life, and God will call us to honor like our jobs, you know, like honor the things he's given us and steward over those properly. Even if we feel like we're not getting paid what we think we should be getting, or we're not getting the recognition that we think we should be getting. And I spent 4.5 years there, being underpaid the entire time. And I remember there were so many moments where I thought I was going to leave because I was like, I need to be getting paid more. But I never left because I didn't feel it on my spirit until the Lord really called me out of it. And because I felt like I was faithful in that season and like just grinding and working and just learning so much, because I was in a position that I hadn't studied in college. And it's so interesting how the Lord will like reroute your whole life, but he'll equip you for it and like qualify you for it, you know? And so I was placed there, I feel like, to learn all that I know, because I was able to like help build a company from ground up essentially for 4.5 years. And then I left because the Lord told me to leave, and I was like unemployed or whatever. And then later I remember when I was asking for a raise at my last job, and I was like, I want this amount much, and they weren't going to meet it. And I was like, well, the Lord called me to leave anyway, so gotta go. But then when I got reached out to like my current job, it was way more than like I had even asked for. And it's just like when you honor the little and you just trust that like if the Lord has me here, he has me here for a reason, then bigger is coming. You know what I mean? But it gets your heart posture right to not be so like consumed with how much you're making, or like be after like the money. I do believe in like getting paid what you're worth and all those things, but like the Lord might have you in a season of little for a reason, to like work on your character, to work on like your finances, all those things before he can bring you bigger.
And I think that as believers, we're always going to go through a season of little, because God needs to, like you said, build our character and build our strength, our muscle, our endurance, so that we can carry the much that he has for us. And so I think that whole idea of if you steward the little properly, you're not going to squander the many. And so I think that we have to really embrace that season of little. And I remember when I first got to college, the verse my mom left me with, she was like, Lola, do not despise the days of small beginnings. Like, don't despise these small beginnings, because there's something that God is growing inside of you, and it's dependent on you leaning into what he's doing and what you see as small and insignificant. So I'm just so grateful that I was able to see the small things and say, God, even this, I'm going to find a way to honor it. Like, I'm going to do whatever I can with it and make it work, make it stretch by your grace. And I know that one day you will be able to entrust me with much as a result.
Yeah, I think there is significance in the little things, kind of like what you said too. It's like we can see it as insignificant because we're like, I'm just like doing this job and it's like not whatever. But it's like there's so much importance in that, you know? And I think if we change our perspective towards that, even though I know it's hard when bills need to be paid and things are like whatever, and you feel like everyone's elevating but you and all those things, but like everything is seasonal in God terms, you know, in kingdom, like everything is seasonal. Like this season too shall pass, you know, and it won't be forever. And so I think there is like so much significance even in the little. But another thing you said that was really good was like the closed doors. And I feel like we've always heard like closed doors lead to open doors and all those things. But like you had said it in a way where it was like God closed the door because he knew I would try to push through it if it wasn't like all the way closed. And I kind of want you to like emphasize on that, because I love that. It's because the way I'm like visually like seeing it is like kind of like the closed doors kind of get you on the right path. And that's like his path, you know, like it gets you in the right direction with him. And so if like this door is closed, then you go, if this left door is closed, then you go to the right. If you get right door is closed, then you go that way or whatever, you know? And so I just like love that point.
No, I think that when you know the type of person you are, I think some would call me hard-headed. I just think I'm determined. But knowing that like that determination means that like when you have your mindset set on something, you're going to try with everything you have to make it happen. But when you realize that as a believer, it's not about what I can do. It's not about me trying. It's when God has now appointed something and it's in the right season, then that door is going to open. And so I definitely had to go through a learning season of when I wanted something and I thought I knew what God, desired for me. So I started off wanting to be, I used to say a non-practicing lawyer. Like I wanted a law degree, but I didn't want to like practice law. I just needed it. I think because of because I knew how much educational pressure there was. My older sister, she's a doctor now, and my younger sister, she's a social worker, and she'll be pursuing her PhD soon. And I was like, well, I have to be a doctor of something. I can't just be Lola.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I need a law degree, so I'll be a doctor of law. But I'm not going to practice. I'll just have the degree just to say I did something with my life, essentially, and then do the other things that I want to do after I do that. And I think that's kind of, unfortunately, I know specifically because I was raised in the Nigerian community that there's a lot of pressure. It's like be an engineer, be a doctor, be a lawyer. There's really limited things that we can do in life. And so I think that pressure was really heavy on me. And so when that door closed with my university not having a pre-law program, I was like, okay, what's the next best thing? Like, how can I now go to law school? And so I was like, okay, economics, international management, cool. And then when I did my internship at the agency, and I didn't think I was going to accept the full-time offer. But then I realized that I haven't positioned myself to actually go to law school. And even the schools I was looking at, they required work experience. So I was like, okay, I guess I have no choice but to take this offer. And when I was looking for what location I wanted to be in, I was like, I want to be around family. I want to be close to home. But at that time, my mom's business had just failed and she was trying to figure out what her next step was going to look like. So I didn't know what home was going to look like for us. And I was like, I guess I can't go home. And the only place that was open to me, my aunt who lives in Los Angeles was like, if they offer you a full-time job, I enjoyed you staying with me during your internship, so you can come and live with me if you get the job offer. And so I was like, it looks like Los Angeles is the only choice for me right now.
That's God's grace.
Literally. And I came to LA and I didn't know, I was going through a season of I was broken in that season. I was trying to use things to validate my worth. And whether it's like a position, whether it's a person, whether it's a title, it's like I needed that worth to be validated because I didn't feel worthy of anything in that season. And God had to take me to a place of seeking him. And that's why when I came to LA, I was really hungry for community. And just like I went to literally like 25 different churches before finding one. I just knew that I needed to find a godly community so that I could be rebuilt back up in the right way. And when I ultimately found one, the first day I walked into the church, God was like, you're home. And the second day he was like, serve my house. And I knew that it was in serving his house and getting plugged into community that he was slowly like building me back up. My self-confidence started to come back together. My self-worth that I had lost was now being realized again. And God was reaffirming the things that he told me long ago that I thought I had disqualified myself of. And he was like, no, like you're still who I called you. And when I, look at the career aspects, there's so many places in which the no was exactly what I needed for the greater yes that God had for me. Because of every single move in my career, I wanted to first leave the agency because I wanted to start my own business and do different things. But God would just make it to where I just had no choice but to stay. And then, so most recently, I really wanted something and I had been working towards it for the past 2 years, honestly. And basically since graduating and starting work, I've always been in some kind of program, whether it's like just trying to further myself educationally on the side. And I had been in this program for the past 2 years and I was ready for the next step, and it would require me to leave Los Angeles. And I was like, God, like, it's been a wonderful time here. Thanks for, bringing me to the city. Thanks for just what you did in this time frame in which I was here, how you settled me in this church community. And I was just like, I was grateful to God, but I just knew I was going to be leaving soon. And earlier this year, when I was supposed to be taking that next step, God told me not yet. And I was really annoyed. I was like, excuse you. Like,
yeah.
After working towards this for the past 2 years, and I know I carried you along in the process. So it's not like I just did something on my own. Like you were the one who gave me the desire. So why not yet now? And so I was really, really annoyed with God. And I'm honest with God. I'll let him know, like, I'm not really feeling this decision. This isn't for me. But then like I'll verbalize what I'm feeling, because ultimately I'm going to surrender. I'm going to go towards what his will is, but I have to be honest with him initially. And so I just let him know just my disappointment, because I was like, in my opinion, this was my plan C. Like God said no to my plan A. He said no to my plan B. And now I'm like, it's plan C, and I've been working towards plan C. And now you're saying not yet in the moment in which I have to make this move. And he said not yet. And I told God, I was just like, you don't like my plans, clearly. So, whatever you have for me this year, because this wipes my whole year clean. Like all my plans are gone for the year. And so whatever your plan is for this year, I just co-sign, because at this point I clearly I'm not good enough to make up my own plans. So I just co-sign it. And so what God did in this year, where he was just like, you gave me your complete surrender, and I did nothing outside of exactly what God asked me to do in this year. And it has been so freeing, because the pressure of having to have it right and to know what the next step looks like is no longer on me. Because of this year, I was like, I give you 1 year to figure it out for me. And he did just that. And so I see what those closed doors and what those hard no's meant. It didn't mean that I was misaligned. It didn't mean that I didn't hear from him when he told me what company to start, when he told me what steps to take. It just means that he needed me to take those steps, so that when he said no, I was ready for what he was going to bring as his yes. And so I think it's just the no's that God brings us. It's preparing us for the yes, but we have to be the person who's ready to carry the yes.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you said that. Sometimes we think that like we're misaligned or we heard him wrong because we were like, oh, we were supposed to do that or whatever, but it all is working together for your good. There was something you said that like you were so broken, and then you found community at one and stuff, and you needed that right community to like build you up. And it reminds me of this verse. That's why I was over here scrolling trying to find it. But it reminds me of this verse in like Jeremiah 31, where he said they found grace out in the desert. These people who survived the killing. Israel out looking for a place to rest met God out looking for them. God told them, I've never quit loving you and never will. Expect love, 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 and more love. And so now I'll start over with you and build you up again. Dear Virgil Israel, this is the Message version by the way. You'll resume your singing, grabbing tambourines, and joining the dance. You'll go back to your old work of planting vineyards on the Samaritan hillsides and sit back and enjoy the fruit. Oh, how you'll enjoy those harvests. And it's just like, it was after these people had like suffered so much and like felt like they were broken down and felt like the Lord had abandoned them and all that. And I love how the Lord starts with one, like, I've never quit loving you. Like, expect love, love, and more love. And now, like, I'm going to build you up. And so it's like in every broken place that we're in, it's like intentional by the Lord, you know? And then he places you in a space where now he can build you back up.
The right way.
And then now the right way. And then now you can enjoy the fruits of the labor. Because he said you were going to go back to doing the work you were doing, but you were going to enjoy your fruit.
Exactly.
And like you'll enjoy the harvest. And so that kind of like just reminded me of that, because I was like, that's so good. But another thing I want to touch on to transition into like work and faith kind of, because you kind of like went on that, and I was like, wait, there's the part that is so good. But you had said something about wanting to be like a doctor of law for the sake of the title, right? And I feel like a lot of times in like corporate world, especially when you're not necessarily led by the Lord, or you're just more so worried about your own self, like elevation. Like we can be so after a title.
Yeah.
And that is something like God really had to check on my heart on, because I grew up in like not being like well off or anything like that. And so I always wanted to be like better, right? Like I wanted to have this title. I wanted to like be like the corporate girlies on like the TV shows and movies and like live in this high-rise building and all these things, right? And so I wanted this like title and like this look and this persona essentially, but my heart posture wasn't in the right space to even for that, you know. It was only for my own self of like I did it type of thing, you know, to prove anyone who ever thought that I couldn't do it wrong, but also just to be like better off than where I was. And there's nothing wrong with like kind of being better off than where you were, or like wanting to do better than how you grew up. But when you come at it at a space of like, let me get this title, let me go this, let me do that, like that, you're more accustomed to just like sacrificing your character and just doing whatever just to get there. And then you get on this hamster wheel that like literally burns you out, you know? And what the Lord checked my heart on, because at my last job, I was like more so trying to get title, is like now I'm in a space of like, I don't even care what my title is. Like I'm so free from it. It's like, I do believe in like getting paid what like my worth and my value. And if I, you know, all those things like that is separate. But like in terms of title, like I could stay the same title my whole life. Cause like that means nothing to me because it's a man given thing. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, I'm a child of the Lord and I'm here on assignment and I don't know how long I'll be here. So I'm not going to stay here thinking like I just need to like climb, you know? And I think once I got into that mindset, I became so free in how I work. And I now work like as if I'm just working for the Lord, right? Like I'm not working for my own self-elevation. I'm not working, I have a boss and I'm working for her, but like technically I'm working for the Lord, you know? And so I steward it more properly. I steward it as if I'm stewarding it for the Lord, or like as if I'm, you know, anything that we do for the Lord, we always want to do tip-top, like pristine and like make sure it's great. And so that title thing, like you reminded me of that, because we are a lot of times just like wanting to get these societal titles to prove people wrong, or to get to a place where people think that like it's really for other people too. It's like for people to think like, oh, we did it, or like we're up here and you know, but it's like for what?
No, and it's crazy because of we don't realize how titles have us in a chokehold. Like we will do anything for a title. And when, like you said, it's for other people. Like these titles are to introduce ourselves to other people. And so if you don't know who you are, you need that title as your introduction. But if God has now secured you in who he's called you to be, whether or not other people know what that is, as long as you know it, I'm cool with that. And it's crazy because I went from that place of, you know, really desiring that doctor title, doctor of law title, just because of I didn't want to be seen as less than. Like I didn't want to be not the disappointing daughter. I think that I grew up as I was like more of the rebellious one. And so I always saw my sisters as like, you know, the ones who were like perfect in my mom's eyes. And I was like the trouble child. And so I think that working hard and having like a successful career was my way of saying like, you know what, like I didn't turn out all that bad, you know, like I you know, I'm not hopeless kind of thing. And I know she didn't see me as hopeless, but you know, sometimes it could feel when you see other people, you know, pleasing a parent in the way that the parent desires to be pleased, and you just can't figure out how to do it for yourself. You desire. And so when I realized that God was saying no to law school, it took me a long time to tell anybody. It took such a long time. I was embarrassed. I was like, this whole time, this has been like prophesied over me and like said, like, you're going to be a lawyer. And it felt like I wasn't cut out for it. It's like, is it because I'm not good enough? Like, why now would you say no to this? And so there was one uncle in particular who I love him so much. And he was like, you know, I don't think you should take a job, this agency, because once people get good careers, like they never go back to school. And I was just like, no, like this is something that God has told me I'm doing. So I'm absolutely going back to school. Right. And then 2 years in, when God was just like, no, like you're not, I was studying for the LSAT. And it was just like, it was heavy. Like, this is not who I've called you. You're trying to live up to the expectations of other people. And so it was months of just like going through the why behind law school and why I needed it so badly. I needed the title so badly. I didn't want to be the disappointing daughter, the disappointing Hassan girl. And I was just like, man. But when I finally got to terms with God, like, what you have for me is better. If you're telling me no to this, it means you have something better behind your back. And so I want to seek that thing. And getting that freedom, telling him specifically, he was the very last person I told that I wasn't going to law school. And telling him specifically was like the moment, like, it was freedom. Like, I'm no longer bound to like that shame aspect in my own head. And so now it's funny because I've been at my agency for 6 years now, and I came in with a particular title. And since then, I've gotten, I think, 5 different promotions. And so I have a completely different title now. But if you look at my Outlook, like at my name and like my email header, I have the same title as what it was when I first joined. And it's funny because of when I first joined, they had behind my title, they had assistant in parentheses. And I was like, who do they think I am? I'm not an assistant.
And got erased right away.
Right. And so I'm like emailing, like, why do I have assistant and other people don't have assistant behind their titles? Like, I was really vexed by it.
Yeah.
And so when I realized, I was like, I'm putting so much effort towards an Outlook title. Like, are you kidding me? And when I was getting my promotions, people are like, oh, like, why does it still say assistant behind your title? And your title is already changed, but it still says that old title and assistant behind it. To me, like, leaving that there is just my way of saying, like, God, like, I'm not here for what man sees and what that title says. I know who you've called me. And if every year you ask me to stay in this position, I'm going to stay here. And yeah, you're going to get paid, you know, like when you look at like my W-2, there's my actual titles there, but not to everybody. So if I email someone, they think that I'm like person who just joined the company, when in reality it's like, no, I've been here for a minute. But it's okay. Like, you can think whatever you want. But I think it takes a level of like God growing you and that confidence. And so there's actually something that in my devotions this morning, I was reading a devotion by Susie Larson, and she said, she was just giving different examples of like humility and like the disciples when Jesus first encountered them, and how Peter was like a seasoned, experienced fisherman, and he had been out laboring all day or all night, and then now Jesus pops up and he's just like, go back out, and he's like, who are you? Like, why would I, like, you're not a fisherman, I am. And he ended up obeying and going back out reluctantly, but he did it. And then he saw the harvest that came and the overflow of fish that he picked up just because he like did what God asked him to do. And there's 2 sentences that really stood out to me. She said, humility precedes honor and breakthrough. And then she says, trust Jesus, even though he reduces you. Understand that he is in the process of increasing you, of adding to your spiritual credibility and multiplying your impact in the world. And so I think that, you know, that place of feeling as if like you're being treated or viewed as less than, and knowing that like I have so much more to offer, but I'm not able to because of a title, because of an opportunity, because of a position, because of a closed door. And that season of humility is really hard for us to sit in sometimes, but God requires us to sit through that because God cares about the heart and he's working on the heart. Like other people, they see the outward, they see the titles, they see the things that make you look good and stand out. God wants your heart. And he's like, if your heart is not in a position that I can work with, then I'm not going to work with it. And we don't want that. We don't want God to say that your heart is so self-consumed. Your heart is so much about pleasing other people that me, your God, I can't work with it because you won't allow me to. And so knowing that God will always put us through a season of humility where we just have to say, I'm obedient to somebody who's not a fisherman and you don't actually know what it takes, but I'm going to say yes to you anyways because you told me to go back out and to cast my net.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always make sense to us when God is placing us in a season, asking us to do things, but there's a reason behind it. And the reason is our heart because he wants us to be ready. So
that's good. Wow, there's so many good things. But I love what you said about the heart because that is like one of the things I always remind myself when it comes to anything I'm doing in any space, really, but especially my job, because I feel like it's so easy to get offense there, to be on defense sometimes at any job you are in, you know, because you're working constantly with people. But I always check my heart, you know, and it's like there have been times, I don't care about the title, but there have been times someone else got title and I'd be like, But because I used to care, it obviously will pull on that like thing. But then I'm also like, but I actually don't really care that much, you know, because I think the thing with titles too is that you find identity in them when they become your everything, you know, and so you start to idolize it. And then what if the Lord, because eventually he probably will calls you out of that, you know, and it's like you don't want to let it go because it's like who you've become or it's the only thing that you are and you find identity in it. And so I think like letting those go, and I love what you do about like the email and stuff like that, because it does keep us in like our rightful place, you know, and like below the Lord, you know, and not being like, well, I work all this and I do all this and so I should have this. Whereas like you're here because the Lord placed you here and you have the talents because the Lord gave them to you. Exactly. And so like in anything in work, and kind of this kind of goes on to like another thing is like, I feel like what we have to do, especially in like the space, if you're not working for something that might be like faith-led or anything like that, or just like not a church or ministry or whatever, I feel like one of the things we have to do is always invite God into the space. And it's like, yeah, we know sometimes we'll know like God brought us here, but then it'll end right there, you know, and we think that like, well, this is not like ministry or whatever, then it's like God is not that he's not welcome here, but it's like we forget that he also controls this space. You know what I mean? And so I feel like one of the things I've learned is, one, because I'm in my job because of the Lord, and I know that for a fact because I'm so not worthy and unqualified, but he qualified me for it. Same. Amen. But also one of the things I always do is invite him into the space. And so like I know I can't do it without him. And so like sometimes randomly I'll be like praying at my desk with my eyes open. Well, sometimes I close them, but like I'll pray at my desk. Like if I'm feeling like overwhelmed or I feel like the enemy's trying to get in my head about something, I'll pray. Or before I lead a meeting, I'll pray because I always want to be in the space of I'm below the Lord and he's above me. And so like he will make this work. However, his will is to make it work. And he always has our best interest in mind, you know? And so funny because like I'll like lead meetings and it'll all be a blur. Cause like when you lead and stuff, it's like public speaking, you know, you're like, wait, what did I say? But people will be like, oh, you did so well. Or like, how are you so confident? I'm just like, dang, Lord, you really just moving in there.
See me shaking?
I know. I'm like, you didn't see me shaking, but I will go to the bathroom and pray and be like, Lord, have your way and speak through me and let it go well. And then that'll be that. And so it's like, I think the number one thing is like inviting the Lord into any space, but especially like workspaces, because he's not exempt to anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. I remember my very first time like leading a project at work, and I was having like my wrap-up meeting with the board of directors and the executive management of this company. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? I am freaking out. And then 15 minutes before the meeting's about to start, I have a full-on anxiety attack. And I've never like experienced that. Like I've had like mini ones, but this is like I'm heaving. I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm going to like throw up. I'm just like, I don't know what to do. And so I am freaking out. And I'm just like, God, I can't do this. I think I should call in sick right now. I'm like freaking out. And I just had to give it to God. Like, God, I'm going to embarrass myself if you don't show up. So I need you to just like say something. And so 5 minutes before, it's like the tears stop. I like put myself back together and I like log on. I'm like, good morning.
Thanks for coming.
And in that moment, it was that reminder that I am completely insufficient without God. And I think that some people might like fear saying that because it's like, no, like that's discarding the work you've done and all that. But no, reminding yourself that like, it's not me who got me here. It's not my work that's got me here. It's not me who's going to keep me here. It's God. And so getting to that place of absolute dependency on the gifts that God has given you. He gave it to you for a reason. And so when we talk about being a believer in a corporate setting, it is a ministry. Like I think that we are coming into a stage in the kingdom world where we're realizing that ministry is not just the walls of a church. Like when we come together as a corporate body, it's so that we can get the equipment we need to go out and to reach a dying world. And so there's a dying world in the area of politics. There's a dying world in the area of healthcare. There's a dying world in the creative industries, entertainment industry. There's a dying world in our school systems. Like there's a dying world there's a need of light in these dark places. And so God is not calling everyone to be a pastor, to be a preacher, to be like, but he's calling us to be his ambassador in the arenas that he has called us. And so I think when you take on that idea and the identity that God, this is ministry. Like I don't have to go in and be preaching every day, but something that I take very seriously is being a light in the rooms that I'm placed into, making it like abundantly clear that I'm not like everyone else. I'm not here because of I worked hard to get here. I'm here because for some reason God thought it fit for me to be in this room.
You're touching on so many good points, and you're in my flashcards, but not my notes, but my flashcards. No, that's so good because that's where we get caught up, is that like this isn't typical ministry. And it's like typical ministry to people sometimes can be like church and stuff, but it's like, no, how do those people get reached if we don't ever go into those spaces, or if he doesn't use us? But I love what you said about light and dark, because I had that written down too, because it's like, if I do anything here, Lord, let me be light. You know what I mean? Like even if I don't do the best or whatever, like let me be light to these people, you know? And so that's something I take very seriously too. And I always want to make sure that I'm not shrinking in the space, because you're not able to be light if you shrink back and you conform to your environment, you know? And I've had to learn that as well, because it is hard to be like the one that stands out in an environment and to be the different one. But it's so crazy, because it's like when you stand firm in who you are and you allow yourself to show up as light, that's when, like, even if they're like a little resistant at first, they start to like warm up to you, which is like so interesting. Not resistant to being friends with you, because that's different, but more so resistant to your beliefs. And then they start to warm up to your beliefs, and then you see them liking the things you post and you know, because those are the people you spend a lot of time with, you know, and they're like, oh wow, like there's something about them, or they like you or whatever, you know, and it's like, and they're a believer in the Lord, and it's like, well, who is that Lord, you know? Or like they know of God, but they don't really know God, you know? And so I kind of just like, how do you not shrink in the environments where there aren't a lot of people that maybe believe the same as you?
Yeah, I think it comes with first establishing who God has called you to be. And I know when I first started working in the corporate world, it was very daunting. It's like, oh, like this is a lot. How do I blend in, especially, you know, coming in as a double minority, as a Black woman in corporate America, working for the federal government? It's like, interesting, you know? And so it's like, I feel like I had to prove myself. And so when I realized that I'm proving myself, I'm trying to blend in, I'm trying to, because I work in a setting where it's like predominantly male. And so it's like, okay, like I'm going out trying to like show y'all that I can hang. And it's like, no, like that's not who God has called me to be. And so when I realized that I'm more than just this position, I'm more than just this company, it now becomes, you now start to operate out of the why in which God has placed you in that position in that company. And so realizing that it's because of these individuals might never get to experience what God looks like, what God sounds like, what God's love feels like if I'm not here. And so knowing that I don't have to go in and every day be preaching the word, but the little things that I do, like it'll make them like, that's interesting. Like, she didn't like pop off like other people would have popped off in this situation. And so just showing them what love looks like, exercising patience in like a serious level in those settings, you know, maintaining professionalism when other people are just going off. And it's like, you're not going to bring me to that level because of there's a standard in which God has placed on the lives of believers. He's called us to be in the world, but not of the world. And so that means that we can't, like you said, just become everything and just try to blend in, and not dim our lights. And so for me, it's just at a place where people can be like super serious and super, it could be a really like cold environment, but it's like, no, I'm going to be joyful. I'm going to walk in smiling and not reacting to the things that the situations that pop up the same way other people would react. And it started, I think like 2 years in, I started recognizing that, oh, like when everyone like leaves the room, everyone goes out to lunch and I'm still in here working, a coworker will just kind of come up and be like, just start like pouring. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, why are you sharing all of this? But it's because of like, they see that there's something, there's something safe about this individual, and now they feel like they can. And so those are the moments where I lean into showing them what God's love looks like, what God's grace, what his mercy looks like, and letting them know that there is a hope. And so it took a while, and I'm still trying to find that balance of being a light and being an ambassador of Christ in the corporate world, but not being like overly preachy. Yeah. I think there has to be a balance when you're interacting with people in general, even believers. Like I think there's meant to be a balance, because of Jesus didn't come down with hail and brimstones. Like he came down with love. He came down as a servant. And I think that there's that aspect of like serving others to where they realize like, oh, like this person actually cares. And so I think it's being genuine in your care, being genuine in interactions with people, being genuine in giving people grace in the corporate world. But when you lead with grace, when you lead with love, it leaves people curious. And I think curiosity is what ultimately will lead people to Jesus. And I think the aspect of walking in that way, it takes a lot. It takes like seeking God seriously, and having him refine your character. And there's always going to be that period of refining so that he can make you reflect more of him. And I think just committing everything you do to the Lord, committing your day to the Lord, committing, whatever assignment you have to the Lord. And my older sister, who's a doctor, I went to visit her in Florida a few weeks ago, and she's in her first year of residency right now. And I was dropping her off at work early in the morning. And before she walked out of the house, she knelt down. And I just saw her just like committing her hands and committing her day into the Lord. And I was just like, wow, what an honor and what a privilege it would be, for those patients to know that they don't just have a doctor who just thinks that it's because I made it through med school, because I'm so smart that I did this. But like, God, like these hands, let them be an extension of your hands, that every single life I touch leaves better than the way they came in. And, as a physician, it's leaving, whether it's physical healing or leaving to the other side. Being able to even hear how she talks about, making a death call on somebody, but her being in the room, and as she's making that death call, she's saying, Lord, receive this individual, like let your love meet them, at heaven's gates. And so knowing that the work we do, it really does matter. For a physician, it looks like life and death, but in each of our roles, it is life or death. Yeah. Because there's people who God has said, I'm placing them in your vicinity because your life is the only example of me they're ever going to see. So I need you to represent me well so that they can come home and receive me as their Lord and their personal Savior.
I feel like when you put it like that, I mean, it gets really serious, which it is that serious too, but it makes you realize, like, it makes you zoom out a little bit, and not be so worried about self and selfish and like what you can get out of it and whatever, how do I look, what can I do and stuff like that. But it's like putting yourself in the space of like, the Lord is using me wherever he sends me. And it's like, am I allowing myself to be used? Yeah. Or am I being disobedient by shrinking or not committing it to the Lord or not inviting him into the space. And therefore these people that have been assigned to me are not getting reached. Yeah. And so, I think, there's so many like good things in that, but Yeah, just invite your Lord in your workspace.
Invite him. He wants to be a part of it.
Yeah,
he needs to be a part of it.
He needs to be a part of it. And it's like the only way, because sometimes like we'll be called to places that we don't even feel qualified for, you know, or places where we're like, why am I even here?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like the only way you'll get through it, the only way you'll sign off on that assignment or whatever, or get to the other side, is by committing it to the Lord. Absolutely. Is by giving it to him. Okay, so yay. Before we like close it out, I want to do what we do at the end of every episode, which is like, I'll say one thing, like give your Lord your whatever, right? And then you'll say one thing, and then I'll end it.
Okay.
So just think of what your one thing is going to be. I think of mine too. Okay, so I'll start us off by saying, invite the Lord in every space that you go to.
Don't fight out of selfish ambition and push the door open yourself. Allow God to lead you and open the doors on your behalf.
Amen. And then the last thing I'll say is stay prayed up.
Stay prayed up.
That's a wrap.